investor who purchased this property and is kind enough to allow all of you guys to see it. So really appreciate that.
No problem. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, so this is a triplex conversion. You guys all had a chance to see the basement. So this is what our focus is on right now, because obviously you guys know interest rates are going up, the cost of owning a house is going up. So it's great that we're able to buy properties at lower prices, but one of our principles when it comes to investing is we want any property we buy to have positive cash flow, and it's become very tough to do that. So this is one of the few remaining strategies where, because of having 3 units, we're able to create more rent, right? So Carlo, maybe why don't you share your thought process buying this property? Obviously, now is an uncertain time, but you decided to take action. So why don't
For
you
sure.
walk us through that?
So I'm basically part of a coaching program, and one of my goals right now is to rebalance my portfolio. What that means is basically I wanted to look at all my assets, the least performing one, get rid of that. I had a Toronto condo that was negative cash flowing me around $700, and that's after kind of just like refining it a bunch. So I had initial capital of, let's just say, 200 grand. I knew that I wanted to roll that into something that was positive cash flowing, something where I could make money on the buy. And I chose Welland, after watching Koukun and his team do a bunch of triplex conversions. And the numbers just worked. Just hearing stories of working in Welland, the permit process, fairly straightforward. And yeah, so I hooked up with Koukun and his team. Ryan, he's not here right now, to just show me some properties. I ran the numbers, and this one worked out for me.
Yeah. So why don't we just do like Q&A style? So you guys saw the property. What questions do you guys have? Any questions?
I guess the big question is, what's the plan?
Sure.
So plan right now it's a single family home. Plan is to convert it into triplex conversion. First floor, main floor is going to be a 3-bed, 1-bath. There's not going to be much done here. As you can see, the bones are pretty good. So it's going to be like a cosmetic reno. We're going to do the floors, do the lighting, fresh coat of paint. Still undecided if I'm going to keep the cabinets. We might do like redo the whole cabinets, or just, repaint it. But downstairs, we're going to do 2 1-bedroom, 1-bath units. So that's basically the plan.
Yeah, and the drawings are in the booklet you guys have, so you can see the layout for the plans. Yeah. This property is unique, right? Because it has, what is it, close to 1,200 square feet of a footprint. So, that's a little bit bigger than most of the bungalows we see. Usually they're around 1,000 square feet. So that little extra space allows you to have these spacious 1-bedroom units. They're not huge still, but they're enough space such that you can get a good tenant who's going to enjoy living there, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
So unit 1 is the main floor, unit 2 is the basement, unit 3 would be
Also in the basement. Yeah, so we're gonna have 2. Yeah, so there's gonna be 2 units in the basement. They're each gonna share the side entrance over here. So this door will be like blocked off. Ample parking for 3 parking spaces out in the front. Yeah.
Is the garage also just parking, or are you storage? Or?
I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if I'm gonna do storage there for additional income. There's a shed out here. I was thinking maybe doing 3 storages out there. But yeah, there's options.
so the garage isn't a default for the main floor. It's still optional for either.
Yeah.
It's still optional for additional storage.
And when there's 3 units, the garage is not automatically, like, you get to choose, right? So
Right.
maybe you do offer it if you get a premium rent for the offer,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
yeah, so the layout for those 2 apartments is on page. It's a little bit into it, but you can see exactly these are the design drawings, right? So that's exactly it. Yeah, so overall, I really like this property, and obviously the strategy really makes sense to me, because we're not assuming interest rates are going to go down. We're hoping they go down, but we're making sure our numbers work as of today. So with today's interest rate, today's renovation cost, today's purchase price,
Right.
if everything just stays the same, this still cash flows. This still is a good long-term investment, and then we can ride out whatever uncertainty the next couple of years bring. Right.
So I think we were talking about this. So it's not going to be a perfect burr, as you can see with the numbers. You know, some money is going to be left in the deal, 150, and it works for me because I had that capital from the sale of my previous condo. You know, and when you look at the swing of things, I was negative cash flow 700. With the cash flow here projected to be like $300, $400 a month. So with that swing, I'd be up like 1100.
Yeah, and if interest rates ever do go down to where they were, the numbers on a deal like this just become ridiculous.
That's right.
Right? But obviously, that's to be seen.
Yeah.
If that would happen or not.
I think the rents right now are pretty, as you can see, they're going up right now. The ones that we have listed, projected, they're pretty conservative. You know, that's something that we could get right now, but who knows what the rents will be in a year's time with all the interest rates going up.
So that brings a very interesting point. So when it comes to creating newly created basement apartments or newly created apartments in general, there are no rent controls on a newly created unit, at least newly created units after 2018. So because of that, this property, the existing main floor has rent controls. Both basement apartments do not have rent controls. So every year, based on what the rental market does, you can adjust it. Obviously, I always say, like, be reasonable. You hear these crazy stories in Toronto where people misuse it. I would not do that. I have a property in the same scenario where the basement doesn't have rent controls, and we're only going to increase it like up to about 100, 150 less than the market rate. Because I know if they leave, it's a hassle to find a new tenant, and if they're a good tenant, I want them to stay. But you're not stuck to the 2.5% rent increases, right? So if inflation stays long term, the ability to reprice your rental apartments is a huge, huge benefit, right? So at least a little bit more than half the rent doesn't have rent controls in a property like this.
I think one thing I wanted to add too is, so this house was originally listed for, I think it was like 630. It sat on the market for 30 days before they dropped the price to around 610. At that 610 price range, still no action on it. Sat on the market for another 2 weeks before Ryan Realtor and I decided to put an offer in for 560. And you know, there was a little bit of back and forth, but we sell it at 570. It was an estate sale, so they were motivated to sell the property. I did act fast. I didn't give them a hard time. So yeah, it was just like mutually beneficial for all the parties.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider adding a second water on here? Does that affect cash flow in any way?
I think based on, you know, the amount of work I wanted to do on it, I weighed the pros and cons of adding a second bathroom. I think the cost of it would have just, you know, my development cost would have been like too crazy. So I just kept it at one bath. Yeah.
This is one of the few properties where it may actually have the space for it because it is 1,200 square feet. But yeah, you can't do everything, right? Like 2 basement apartments, the requirements for 2 basement apartments also is a higher standard in terms of construction. You're doing fire separation between the levels and between the apartments. Lots of windows being cut. But there's just a lot happening in order to make this happen. So you have to control your costs in some ways, right?
And you don't have, you didn't have to do an inspection, right?
So I relied on the inspection that was provided by a previous person that did put an offer, but they didn't pull the trigger on buying it. And then just working with Ryan, he knew who the inspector was, so we could easily rely on it. Going through the inspection process, nothing major arose. I think there was just like an issue with the AC, and at most it would have been like it's like a $8,000 or like $5,000 fix. So at that point, I didn't want to kind of like renegotiate the price, and I didn't want to let the deal go based on that. So
But to answer
I was
your
okay with
question, most of our purchases now we are able to put an inspection
Because
condition.
this is the only time.
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
able to-
you're able
Yeah.
to put a financing condition, inspection condition, but if you have the ability to go in firm, you now have a much stronger ability to negotiate as well. So again, it's worth getting your finances in order, being ready to take action. You can get conditions, which again, if it's your first property, definitely be cautious. But if you see something really good, and if you think like so Ryan is our team member, right? I was chatting with him even a day or two ago. We have a listing where we got two offers. One was a firm offer at 650, one was a conditional at 700. Conditional with a sale of buyer's home condition. That in this market is quite nerve-wracking. The client took the conditional offer, but both me and Ryan were saying that firm offer may actually be worth it because in this market to have certainty, right? So from the selling side, so if you're a buyer able to provide that, you're potentially able to get really good deals in this market, right? So, but it comes with risks. So you need to have your side lined up. You need to be like Carlos said, like if you need to be ready that you may find a surprise that may cost you 10, 15 grand if furnace, AC, a roof leak, right? Things that can come up. On homes like this, I rarely have seen things come up in an inspection that would cost more than 10 grand to fix because it's a, what is it, 70s built
70s
bungalow.
built, yeah.
So it's
They're
recent.
they're built solid. Like if it's not obvious when you walk through it, there's something wrong with the property. I haven't seen things come up that are like 30, 40 grand. Structural issues, right? Those you already kind of see when you walk through the home. There's going to be some problem.
And I understand the opportunity, the momentum of you as a buyer to come in, right? If in case you want to do an inspection with your team, or I'm not sure if that's part of your team, how long would be the turnaround? Like if you make a call to the inspector and say, can you do this now, or you know?
Yeah, like our inspector's pretty good. He tries to come out whether it's a couple of days notice.
Okay. Nice.
If you are going to do an inspection, you will usually have a 5-day conditional period. That's the normal. So then you have a week to sort of make a time that works with the inspector.
But then you might lose that.
You might, but the market is not that active right now. So
Yeah.
you have a lot more flexibility, right?
I don't know if I answered your question, but on this purchase, I did put a condition, two conditions. One was condition of financing, and the second was inspection.
Okay, but
Yeah, but I
you
just
were
didn't
able
use.
to see the.
Yeah,
decent-
like I just didn't purchase the inspection myself because we were able to rely on one that was done 2 weeks prior from a reputable inspector. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Just in case if we offer firm, and then one of the visits we actually noticed that, for example, the AC is not working or the fan is not working, do we have a kind of like a hold to the buyer to fix it before closing?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends on how the listing stated the condition of homes. For example, if they're saying the homes as is, it's up to you to do your due diligence. It is reasonable to expect that the mechanicals of the home should be in working condition. But obviously waiving the inspection comes with risk because you may have the legal right to ask them to fix it, but if they don't, then what? Are you going to walk away? That may put you at risk as well of them like forcing you to close or suing you to close on the deal. So again, if that is like I would only go firm on a property if I was ready to take the risk of some things of the property not being as it seems. If that's something that worries you, I would do an inspection and be certain of what you are buying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit about the 2018.
Yeah.
So it doesn't it's actually the 2018 is when you built the unit, for example, the triplex or the duplex.
After about November of 2018, that's when so the rent control rules in Ontario has flip-flopped a few times. There used to be no rent controls on units built after 1995. They then put rent controls back maybe in 2016 or 17. And then in 2018 of November, they switched it back. So again, all units created before that time still have rent controls. It's only the units created after November of 2018 that don't have rent control.
Oh, okay. So it's not based on when the house is built. It's based on
It's when the unit, correct, when the unit is built. And that was something I specifically looked into because before they weren't super clear on it. It says newly constructed dwellings. So I didn't know does the structure have to be newly constructed, but the most recent wording on it is newly created apartments. For example, legal basement suite, right? New house. So in the actual Ontario government website, it specifically says a basement apartment
Oh,
as one of the newly
when it
created.
was
Yeah.
approved by the city, right?
Correct. When it's approved by the city, there you may have a risk if you buy a property that already has an illegal suite and you legalize it. It's a gray area if because you legalized it after 2018 that there's no rent controls because someone could argue it was rented out before. It was a living accommodation before, even if it wasn't approved by the city. But they would also have a hard time proving that because how would they prove someone lived in the property, phone records, or I don't know. It, I would just go by if you're legalizing it, you're making a new unit, then you can get that benefit.
How do you get rid of the old tenant? Is it easy to get rid of the old tenant or?
In which scenario? Like if you're legalizing an
Yeah,
apartment?
legalizing it, yeah.
I mean, it depends on the circumstances, right? We usually buy homes like this where it's being sold by an owner vacant. So we buy it vacant, we do the work like right from the get-go. Occasionally we'll look at properties that have tenants where if the seller is providing vacant possession on closing date, so they're guaranteeing the tenants are going to be out, they have some sort of agreement with the tenants to leave by your closing date. That's something we're open to. We try not to assume tenants unless they're paying market rent, they're keeping it in a good shape. More often than not, we try to buy properties vacant so we can set the rents. We can find our own tenants.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So I assume that this property right now is R1 zoning.
Yeah.
And once you put two more units, would it be R3 or, and the city is open to, having it as R2 or R3 or?
Yeah. So why don't you share just the process you went through?
So the process right now, we're going through the permit application right now. It is a 4-week permit process. How it works in the city of Welland is you don't have to pay development charges if you're doing individual units one at a time. So you're gonna finish, no permit has to be done on this main floor just because there's structurally nothing has to get done. It's just gonna be a cosmetic reno being done. So a permit application is being done for the the basement unit, the first unit. After that permit is done and closed and the city is okay with it, then you have to reapply for the second basement unit. So you can't do the 2 basement units at the same time. So there is a little bit of additional carrying costs because you do have to wait the additional couple weeks for you to go through the permit process before you could start on the next available unit.
And to answer your question specifically, this is an RL1 zone, which in Welland is the same as sort of an R1 in most other cities. The reason we're able to do 3 units is Welland allows you to make what's called a legal duplex, and you're allowed to add a legal in-law suite to the legal duplex. So essentially 3 legal units, but that's how you meet the requirement. To do a triplex, you would have to be in an R2 zone, but by doing the duplex and the in-law suite, you're able to get 3 legal units in pretty much any residential zone in Welland. Even the lowest density residential, we're able to, like this is the lowest, I think it's the lowest, it's RL1, right?
Yeah.
The lowest density residential. But yeah, like Carla was saying, to avoid development charges, you do the duplex first, you do the in-law suite second. I assume some of the work can be done at the same time. We try to ask the inspector, like, hey, can we just do the plumbing on both at the same time, or do
Yeah.
some things to just save on the cost of trains
Yeah.
coming twice, right?
For the most part, they're pretty reasonable
Yeah.
to work with, and that's part of the reason why I chose Welland, just because of, you know, like less bureaucracy, less
Yeah.
red tape, you know.
So would you have required a permit for this unit if you were adding the second one?
I believe you do, right?
Yeah, but a much smaller permit, right? Just for the plumbing portion. But I mean, people put washrooms all the time without a permit as well, so you'll have to decide your risk tolerance on that. If you were doing that and the basement suites, I'd just throw it into the permit application because you have a permit anyways. But if you were just doing that, I don't know. I don't know if I would do it personally, but
And if you're purchasing a unit that already has tenants and you're going to assume like vacant possession, is there a possibility for the old tenant to come back saying maybe after you rent it out?
so it depends on how you received vacant possession. If the seller negotiated like a cash for keys with the tenants, then they've signed an agreement saying they're leaving, then they have no recourse. If you get vacant possession saying that you're going to move into the unit yourself and live there, and you don't, then they may have some recourse. Or if you say you're getting them out because you're renovating the unit, I think it's the N13, right, to demolish or to renovate a unit, and you do that, then they definitely have recourse to come back. Practically, do people come back? Probably not, because they've moved. They've usually rented another place. They've moved. But if, say, they're with family, they weren't able to find a suitable place, then that could present an issue. So I prefer the cash for keys. If you are in that situation, you pay them whatever it takes to get to an agreement, but then you sign either a N9 or a N11. So it's a mutual agreement to terminate the lease. They're signing it off. They're giving you the okay. Once that's signed and they move out, then they have no more recourse. Yeah.
I have one question. Just to follow up on the permit process.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're going to finish one room first or something? And
One unit.
One unit.
Yeah.
So then you submit only one drawing and then, after the unit is finished, you have to submit another drawing to the city, or you submit the whole 3 units drawing altogether?
I think it's
It would
just,
be 2 stages.
it's 2 stages,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know if the first drawing has Jiva. Do you know? Do they put the second unit at all? No. Okay, so you only show the first unit and then you show the second unit.
It's more than one drawing submission to the city.
Correct. So there are 2 stages: first permit, second permit. But like our architect, they get all the measurements just at once. They design it all at once. They just give you 2, or they actually submit on your behalf just in 2 stages.
So I know that we were able to make a bungalow into 3 units, but is that's it, or you can still make that into a, your 4th unit or
That-
something? Is that the most that
Well,
one can do?
going back to the zoning, in a RL1, this is pretty much it.
Okay.
Three units, right? Which is better than most cities. Most cities, you can just do 1 additional unit. So if you're in a RL2 zone, then you can make a 4-plex. But from talking to our architect who's doing the drawing designs on some of those, just the construction requirements, the fire separation requirements on those, like it brings the construction cost to another level. So if that's something you want to take on, I wouldn't do it as my first project. I would just like this already may be something more than what some of you guys feel comfortable with, but I see it as a way to get into the market at today's sort of higher interest rates, still cash flow, still have 3 good units, you can get good tenants. So yeah, I wouldn't take on. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
If you have a basement finished already,
Yeah.
you still need to worry about the fire separation between the floors.
So Welland has been fairly good about allowing you to keep existing drywall in the ceilings. But I would assume for a project like this, they wouldn't, because you're not doing an in-law suite, you're doing a legal duplex, and you're doing an in-law suite. So I assume they would make you do. I would assume they would make you take it out, or at the least double it up with the 5/8 drywall. But I would I would not put that in my calculation. I would assume you'd have to do it from scratch because
Just to add to that, I would recommend you take the ceiling off because you should put in your channels.
Yeah.
Like for sound separation as well, and then put your X-type drywall, which is fire rated as well. If you're gonna be spending 200,000 on a full 3 units, you might as well spend an extra, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more to make sure that it's soundproof and fireproof.
Just one more.
go for it.
And is there any difference between the secondary living unit and the accessory dwelling unit?
Secondary and accessory are, I believe, the same. The difference is a legal duplex and a accessory unit. Those are different, but each city also has different definitions. I think the city of Hamilton doesn't have a distinction between the two. I think that's why they ask you to have side-by-side parking. But for example, in Welland, that's the two distinctions. But for the most part, there isn't a difference in requirements. How did they ask for parking? So what were the 3 parking spots that they asked for?
They just needed to be all side by side.
Did they?
Yeah,
Interesting.
all 3 side by side.
So, really? Because we've had to do, I remember one of our clients did a minor variance to ask for 3 side by side. I think your garage may be involved as well, because the usual for triplex is a pair of side by side and a pair of front to back. But then the next property we're going to see is Michael's. They allowed you to do 3 front to back.
Yeah, and there was also a garage behind it, so they put it in there.
But in that case, there was no side by side. Everything was just tandem.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I think there's some variance between what they always said.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as cut and dry.
Yeah.
They just want to make sure that everyone has a spot.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like maybe once the drawings we have here are just design drawings, right? Like
Yeah.
the actual architectural drawings will usually have the parking spots laid out. Usually on a one like this, we'll have the 2 side by side and the front to back. And many times I've seen them use the garage as one of the 3 spots. So it's like a L3. But this home is nice where it has actually 3 side by side. We tested this out when I came to meet Carlo and Ryan. We parked our cars
Yeah.
side by side.
So pass the test.
Question.
Yep.
You have a pretty big yard. 3
Think so.
units. What do you think you're going to do with?
Good question. To be honest, I don't know. Other than like the additional storage on the side over here, I don't know. I haven't put much thought into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like I don't know, like shared space, I guess, for everybody. Maybe like like I don't know, place where they can barbecue. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I mean, you have the opportunity here, right? Like,
Yeah.
one of the things I often struggle with is like, do they share, do they not? And some people share really well, and some people don't. So
Yeah.
you have the space, you could potentially try and
Like section them off, maybe. Yeah.
So who will do the maintenance?
If you so that yeah, so if it's a shared space, it may fall on the owner, or ideally you ask one of the tenants as part of them signing the lease, like this is your responsibility, but you also get to use it. If you split it up into 3 separate yards, then it's completely on them. It's like this is your space, you take care of it, right?
Yeah.
But then you have to pay for fencing.
yeah. And ultimately, I think some tenants are like very open to it, taking care of yards.
Oh,
before,
yeah.
and like very.
The gardening.
Yeah, and they'll, maybe they'll decide to stop the rent, but for you, that's great. And then other tenants want nothing to do with it, so it's like so case by case. Ultimately, it's your responsibility.
Can you do a garden suite instead?
I'm not sure if you could do a garden
Well,
suite.
yeah, Welland allows garden suites. For the longest time, they told us you can, if you do a garden suite, you can't duplex the house. But recently, they didn't change the rule, but our architect said that the city was willing to accept those applications to duplex in a garden suite. The reason we haven't gone that route so far, because we've done some garage suites, which is sort of the equivalent, right? Garden suite is actually one step further where you build the structure itself. If you have a garage, you're saving the cost of the structure. But what I find the challenge is, and I haven't heard a good answer to this yet, it's on financing. Because I've been involved in transactions before where there's been two homes on a single lot. Most banks don't want to touch that because they will appraise the house and they will look at the garden suite or the second suite as a garage. So they're not appraising at the full value. To appraise the full value at that time, I was told you can only go to a B lender. Right. So again, if something's changed, I did speak to one mortgage broker that said Meridian was maybe willing to allow it, but they only have 25-year amortization mortgages. Again, I'll need to see that play out a little bit more. The second part is construction cost, right? This project already costs a lot of money. To do a garden suite, you're bringing services out there. You're having a separate HVAC system for the garden suite. Now, maybe you get a bit more rent as a result, but I can't see that being done more cost effectively than what we're doing here, right? Because even, so I bought a property in Fort Erie, planning to convert, there's like a 3-car garage, planning to convert that into a unit, like a 1-bedroom unit, and the cost just for that, I think, was like either 150 to 200.
Is that a detached 3-car garage?
It was detached, but the roof was attached. So it was like next door, right? So that's what I was looking for that.
Yeah.
If it's separate, then no go. But even then, I was like, to spend that much on a 1-bedroom suite versus here we're getting 2, right? For just a little bit more. Just the cost of bringing services, HVAC, it really adds up. So I think it will, like having the land in the future, if they allow garden suites onto a triplex, maybe it's something to look into. But I think I don't see the economic case for it right now. The cost you're putting out and the effort versus the income you're getting right now. Maybe that changes, right? So
We have a question from the back here for Carl. Is that how did you shop for contractors and how did you make a decision on which one you want to go for?
So I'm part of a real estate coaching program, investing coaching program. It's with Corey McKinnon, Michael Watch. So basically, Michael Watch is my coach. He has some power team members that he recommended. There's some guys that he used on his projects. Ryan and Koukun also recommended some guys. So yeah, we just to answer the question, just through my existing network and through my realtor.
Awesome.
yeah, we have a few contractors, but we always say if you already have a pre-existing relationship with someone good, you can still get our architect to make the designs and drawings and just give this to a contractor you already know. And if they can do the scope of work, then go for it. But if not, we also have a couple contractors who can do it. Obviously, this type of project is not a cheap project. You do need someone who knows what they're doing to meet the city requirements for fire separation and everything involved. So it is important to have the right contractor and just be prepared that like these are the numbers we're paying in renovation costs. So it's definitely not small, but yeah, this is what we do.